I'm great, thanks. How are you doing? Just switching between my headsets and not. I'm great. So it sounds like you were already talking a little bit about your exciting program. So we'll get into that a little bit later, in terms of what you guys have been doing with your NFT drop and your metaverse. But I think one of the things I wanted to start off with, Roxanne, is you've got such a fantastic career within digital marketing, so distinguished. You've worked at beauty brands and fashion brands between Clinique, Ralph Lauren, and L'Oreal. I think one of the things that we talked about is like, how have you been seeing the digital, change over the years, and how brands have been and really, leveraging this from that standpoint?
Yeah, I love that because we were just talking about, I think in the session before us, there was a nod to the Great Resignation, how things are moving. And I think as we talk about digital, the changing digital approach over the years that I've seen, and what's happening right now, I think you kind of almost have to start with talent, right? I mean, it's impossible to do any kind of transformation without it. You probably know more than anyone, Marty, how hard it is to find talent, as a partner that's in such an innovative space, for AdMix, how hard it is to find talent and how much harder it is to retain them.
Yeah.
We're finding as we try to recruit and retain, that they want to work in environments that are flexible, that are fearless. They're looking at company and leadership values from the C-level and the board down, looking at our efforts in sustainability and in diversity. And ultimately, they want to do really interesting work. So if you're a company or a brand that isn't transforming, and moving forward, it's really hard, if not impossible, to keep the brightest, and the best in the industry.
Yeah, it is too. And also, as we move into these new areas like the metaverse and so forth, it's fun. In fact, I just got off a call right now, and some of the issues is whether or not the talent is there, because it's so new.
Yeah.
It's hard to find the right partners along those lines, or even the staff that have the kind of experience that you're looking for as we're getting into these new technologies.
Yeah.
And so, you definitely want to be able to skill up within your organization, and being able to find the right people along those lines at this stage, and certain aspects of our business are always a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a good point about talent in the metaverse. They're impossible to find. We're starting to see a few roles creep up, but really, it really isn't, I mean, it's hard to find this talent simply because we haven't done enough in this space, and there's so much learning to do. I love that so many brands and companies are starting to think about this idea of a chief metaverse officer. And so experts like Kathy Hackle and others have been kind of advocating for this in the space, but completely agree with you. And if you're a digitally forward, social first brand today, and you're not talking about NFTs and the metaverse and where the future of consumer engagement is going, it's almost impossible to recruit and keep the interest of the talent that you have, because I think it's going to change pretty dramatically in the months to come. I think the second thing for me, as we think about the changing of the digital approach, is just designing consumer experiences. I mean, I know we talk about the consumer at the heart of it all, or thinking about a strategy that's customer first. But to design a customer experience from the outside in is one of the hardest things to actually execute. But when you keep that at the heart of what you do, you start to listen out and tap into different signals, right? Search becomes the most important thing that you have as you think about how consumers are looking at and trying to find products or brand experiences. Social media becomes the heart of everything that you do. These aren't new concepts, but just the idea of being able to transform as an organization really quickly can be really hard to do unless you're thinking about the consumer from the outside, and then changing your organization and designs internally. I think for partners and agencies, it tends to be so much easier to move and adapt faster. I like to think that with my teams, we change org structures every 18 months, and that should be our way forward. Are we developing new skill sets? Are we changing our priority and focus? And are we truly going where the consumer is? So to me, that one has become more important over time, and I know with the new world that we're getting into, it's going to be a really key point.
And along those lines, Roxanne, we talked a little bit about this the other day, and that is, where do you think we're from a skincare and beauty standpoint, where Clinique stands?
Yeah.
Where is it? What is it that you think? Because that's somewhat, more tangible. It's harder to sort of move into a new digital environment with that. How are you guys approaching that? Where do you think the biggest challenges are from a beauty and skincare standpoint?
Yeah, what's interesting is even though we're a skincare product fragrance and we have our tangible products, whenever you talk to people about, let's just say Clinique and their first experience, most women will hold their hand to their heart and talk about that first memory they have of their mom taking them to the Clinique counter and buying their first makeup or their first skincare. We usually hear a tremendous amount of stories about people just going through life changes, and how the brand has been there with them through that journey. And so you're right in many ways. Like, we are a brand that's about very, very tangible products. But the reason why our consumers are loyal, just like most brands, is those shared brand experiences and those stories. And I think that's what we want to continue, right? Like social storytelling, rich experiences in the metaverse, anything that we can replicate from the physical into digital, without the limitations of physics and gravity, are so interesting and exciting, right? If we think about, and this time, has been interesting. If there was any time when science has been at the forefront of conversations and consumer thinking, it's now. And we're a brand that's been founded on science. It's reimagining our lab, the Clinique lab and the Clinique counter into the metaverse, into the digital world, in a way that continues with that emotion and that experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is, and we just had a question that popped up, but Chris, I'll get that to you as we get to the Q&A. And recently, I think that it's really important. I know you touched on it. You recently launched a successful TikTok campaign. What was the biggest takeaway you learned from your audience as a result of that? I know that brands are always experimenting with a lot of different social channels and so forth, but obviously it's got to be authentic and so forth. What were some of the things that you learned from that?
Yeah. So there's a few things, right? Because I know everyone's been keeping an eye on TikTok and social in general. And over the past 2 or 3 weeks, during the holiday time period, you all might have seen this. TikTok was the #1 destination, overtaking Google, the most visited destination in the world, which is incredible. I think it's been heading there for a really long time. I think this will probably be the first year in 2022 where ad spending on social media will overtake TV and all of the traditional channels. I think it's at the heart of what we want to continue to do. I'm not going to lie when I say it's extremely challenging and hard to know, how to make sure things resonate on TikTok. So we were really lucky in last year. We had 2 really successful campaigns. We had a campaign called Zit Happens that launched around the back to school time. It had 10 billion views on TikTok, which is really incredible. And was based on a consumer insight that as kids are going back to school and as you're going through so many changes as a young adult, you have skin moments and it's a part of life. There's nothing to be ashamed of, and we wanted to kind of bring that and make sure that we brought that to just everyday consumers, and we saw such great pickup from it. Young kids going back to school, putting up videos and content of themselves about to go out or about to get ready, with the hashtag Zit Happens, and we had some really big influencers that jumped in as well. The second big thing that happened for us, which was really interesting, is we have a 50-year-old lipstick called Black Honey. It launched in 1971. And it's a beautiful lipstick. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, Liv Tyler wore it, throughout that series. And what's beautiful about it is when you look at the product, it looks like a black lip color. When you put it on, no matter what your skin tone is, it blends in and adjusts to your skin tone, which is really beautiful. We had a few organic influencers, a lot of just women of color that picked it up and went onto TikTok and said, this product is magic, you have to buy it. And then that started a whole whirlwind of us being one of the most trending beauty products of the year. We had over 100 million views in a matter of weeks. This 50-year-old product was completely sold out. You couldn't buy it in any stores around the world. We had celebrities writing into us. We had influencers trying to get a hold of the product. It was impossible to find. It was a beautiful case study for us of the power of a social media platform that organically can drive sales. The traffic that we saw to our website was incredible. I think we saw growth on our social media platforms as high as 500%. Absolutely incredible a social first initiative that we saw on TikTok. I think there were a tremendous amount of learnings, right? For us, a big part of it is when you're in the middle of a trend, how do you make sure that you just simply enable the content that's getting out there? We didn't try to go the route of those paid media ads that focus on the product, and that all we did was enable influencers that loved the product, were trying to get their hands on it, and we wanted to give them a voice. So we scaled that up as much as we could. We used all of our own assets that we had, our own platforms, our celebrities and influencers, our brand ambassadors like Melissa Barrera went out to the Spanish community. We had Amelia Clark in London, speaking to our global audiences. And we were kind of, able to leverage that as much as possible. It's something we're going to continue to keep our eye on. We've seen such great success from it. New consumers to the brand, tremendous growth for Clinique. And it's an area where we're going to continue to explore.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on something that's so critical to any brand experience as we look forward, from 2022 and beyond. And that is, how do you pull together all the different partnerships and social channels and brand relationships, as well as consumers and advocates into a program to really help amplify what you're doing? I mean, I think that's really, it's got to be really a holistic approach to it. So A, it comes across as authentic, but B, you're obviously engaging with these other programs or partners because they're relevant to your brand message and your brand ethos. So it's important to bring those all into the fold when you're running a program like that. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll say the one thing I'll probably add to that is if beauty is such an aggressive industry and category, any formidable competitor will probably do what many of our competitors did, which is they noticed we were sold out, they noticed the TikTok trend, and they started to jump in to say, you can't find Clinique Black Honey, well, here's our dupe product that's very similar, here's where you can get it. And so I think the only thing I'd add is, as we were going through that, is one eye on the competition at all times. Because we had to really quickly pivot and put out content that was really clearly, I think we had an entire campaign that was called Black Honey Forever. And we had consultants who've been working in the industry for decades, the team that initially started to think about the products, consumers who'd been using it since they were in college, coming out and jumping on this trend of Black Honey Forever as a way to make sure we had our eye on the competition as well. So yeah, it was a really exciting time. And I agree with you. When you see those moments come in, it may start on TikTok, which is kind of going to be the new way of things. TikTok first, social at the heart of everything. And that should start to impact all of the other strategies that surround it, from our in-stores to our site, our earned media, the way we activate major celebrities. I think it's all going to be TikTok first, social at the heart of everything that we do.
Fantastic.
I see a question on the chat. If I can take it.
Sure, absolutely. Go right ahead.
It's so relevant. So thanks for the question, Angela. Yeah, it actually took off organically. We have social listening in place, and we were listening to our consumers, and we saw a spike like you've never seen one in our social conversations. And so this was a purely organic, influencers and consumers picking it up and telling us that they love the product. And so that we then shifted our paid, our earned, our own strategies, including, what we were doing with supply chain to get the product into stores, purely based on a trend that started on TikTok.
That's amazing. I mean, I think you really touched on it. There's so many other elements that you've got to be doing, not only listening to the competition, but listening to the market as well. so that you can pick up. And I think, in some of these conversations or private roundtables that I've done with other brand marketers, is that it's so important to make sure that, from a social media standpoint, that it's authentic. Instead of trying to push something out there, you have to more listen to what's happening and capitalize on opportunities as they happen in an authentic way, as opposed to trying to force them. So I think that that's so important from a brand marketing standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that we talked a little bit about the other day, and that is, from your perspective, from a digital marketing perspective, with your experience, I mean, where do you see the biggest opportunities? And we talked about this, I think you just touched on it in social, but where do you see, for Clinique to reach your audience for 2022 and beyond? Where do you, obviously we've talked about the metaverse and NFT, which is very nascent at this point and just sort of starting, as well as social media. What other channels do you look to, expand into, or that you think have merit as you look into, 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll stay with social since we were just on the topic, and there's no way around it. I think you can see ad spend moving there. Consumers are already there. If you haven't been a brand that's been social first, it might take you years to catch up with your competitors in your category. It's just it's kind of the starting point to inspiration and to brand discovery. I would say, in addition to that, content is just the new media. For us, we want to make sure that, we're building a value chain of content that expands from earned, paid, and owned, and that can fuel the content needs of our consumer. I'd say influencers and our partnerships are key to us. So much of what we do is tapping into new audiences that are extremely loyal to some of the celebrities and influencers that we have in the space. And so that will continue to be a key area for us. And as we define what media is, and if you think about content as a new media format and influencers as the new media, how does that, change? I think those are questions we're going to continue to ask ourselves. I hope COVID gets over soon, because I think I think that we're starting to see consumers getting really excited about meaningful, rich experiences in the digital world. And we'll talk about the metaverse, but in the physical world as well. And so those might be fewer and far between. But I think there's going to be a real role for consumers in having both experiences. And then I know we talk about the metaverse a whole lot. I mean, there's no way around it, is there? But no. as we talk about social media, it kind of reminds me of the early days of social, right? Which is, consumers are already there, brands are still catching up. I think there's a really short window where you can lead and you can innovate in the space before it's flooded. Think about how hard it is to stand out in social today. It's such a crowded space. Brands have been testing and learning for years. I think there's a short window of time before it's such an everyday part of our marketing plans. I know from the latest Forbes numbers, in a few years, by 2025, it's going to be a $400 billion market. The potential of it and what it can be is really significant. So I know it's early days, but for us, I think we're going to continue just purely based on the performance we've seen so far and the interest in the movement of consumers. I think it's an area we're going to continue to explore.
Yeah, and again, as we'll get into that a little bit later, because I know it's definitely on everybody's mind in terms of what it is and why it's important and where to go there. But speaking of which is a great segue into my next question. That was P&G, a competitor. Yeah. They recently launched their beauty sphere in the metaverse, and again, I think you and I talked about this. They're using it to educate consumers, allow them to interact with their brands, while also providing that interactive experience in panels and other features. And I think you've touched on it. I mean, that's a space that you see Clinique and the broader Estee Lauder brands experimenting in as we move forward. A, given the growth. B, given the fact that consumers are there, but are going to be going there. But it is still very nascent.
Yeah. And I can speak to Clinique, right? A lot of what we want to do as a brand is to make sure that the experiences that we provide at the counter, at store, those memories that consumers have, and to enable that art of storytelling that today happens in the physical world. We want to make sure that that extends into the digital world. Now, for my creative teams, this can be the most fascinating project ever, to recreate our labs and to recreate our stores with no gravity, no limitations of physics, no limitation of space is really incredible. And it starts to become such a fascinating project as we think of experiences like what P&G has done. So I think there's going to be more there. I think the experience part is just one part of it, right? Like there's so many parts that lead to that, which is the building of your avatar, who you are in the metaverse and how you represent yourself. Just like it's important to us in the physical world with your skincare and your beauty regime, it's as important in the digital world. The experience that you go through, your social graph or your social network, whether it's friends that you have in the physical world that are moving over, or people that you're connecting with in the metaverse, and then the economy of it all. So there's multiple different areas that we're starting to think about. Very, very similar to P&G, we also want to continue to do what we're doing across all of our consumer engagement touch points, right? Which is tell stories about the brand, tell stories about our products, and make users see how and why Clinique is unique and different. If we can give them access to scientists, to consultants, to our spaces, which is so much easier to do in the digital world, I think that's certainly where to go. I think the one other thing I'd call out is more than ever, it's important to have really rich creative experiences. And so that's an area we're always looking at, is as we get into the metaverse, this isn't just like building another microsite that is, an interesting video. The experiences need to be really engaging and authentic, because similar to getting onto a new platform, like a Twitch or a TikTok, it can easily go the other way if you don't appear authentic and true to who that consumer is. And so the richness of the creative and the richness of the creative experience is something that we've been paying a lot of attention to.
And and I think that really talks to a lot of what you did with your recent program with NFTs and so forth. Because as I really learned about that was really tied to your loyalty program.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you used it as a way, to reward your customers via their personal stories of optimism.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be really great to share with everybody, how long did the process take from ideation to execution? Like what did that look like from internally, from the time that you thought, hey, this is something that we really think, but making sure, again, to your point, that it's authentic. So how did you tie that all together? And it sounds like you did that with your personal stories of optimism. And then what was the reward for people? I think that you should share that, because that's really important too.
Yeah, I'd love to. And congrats, Marty. I heard you guys launched your first NFT about a month or so ago. Yeah, it was a really exciting experience for us. It happened really, really quickly because we knew we had a couple of competitors that launched ahead of us. We wanted to move as fast as we could. The way that we thought about our NFTs, because we looked at the landscape and said, everyone's either giving you an NFT because you've bought a product, or they're auctioning up a piece of art or something that you can own. For us, the Clinique consumer that we have one of the most loyal consumers in the category. And the expanse of who we're talking to is pretty significant. We're talking about everyone from who's trying out Clinique for the first time in their life, and they're going into the counters with their mom to buy skincare or makeup, all the way to our ageless consumer. So one of the first things we said was, as we get into significant innovation, how do we make sure that our current consumer understands it? And how do we bring them onto this journey with us? We did not want to do a one-off, buy something, get an NFT that only appeals to a few, that's only understood by a few. So we said we wanted to lower the barrier to innovation for our current consumer. The second message we wanted to send out was that you are more valuable to us than someone who isn't a Clinique consumer today. We wanted to make sure that as we are looking at new consumers, we're also rewarding the people that have been with Clinique for a really long time. So the program was only open to Clinique loyalty consumers. So you had a certain period of time to sign up, but if you were already in our database, it was open to you. And then the third thing we said is more than money, our currency is, because we didn't want to make money off of this, what we said was our currency is social storytelling. We want to hear your story. So as we launched our holiday campaign at the end of last year, our brand is founded on the pillars of joy and optimism and hope. And so we wanted stories that really celebrated that. And so we encouraged people to send in, stories about what was giving them hope and inspiring them, and people that were inspiring them around that time. The stories we got were incredible. Teachers who had to shut down, their classes and couldn't see their students. We had a food blogger who her dream was to start something, and during COVID she had the courage to, and had thousands of followers. A woman that traveled, halfway across the world during COVID to find love, and wanted to share so much about the person that she was getting married to because he brought her so much hope and inspiration. Parents who had children who were sick, a mother who had a child with autism, just like the children in their lives that were bringing them hope and making them smile. Those were the kinds of stories we were getting from all around the world, and it was really, really incredible. So that, that was sorry, go ahead, Marty.
I was gonna say, what did they win? Talk a little bit about what because I think those stories are wonderful, because that's, again, that gets back to, creating content and so forth, and really embracing your core customers. But you lower the bar so that it wasn't about just getting an NFT. It was also getting product for a long period of time. And really engaging with the consumers in a way that was meaningful.
So there were two things that you could win. One was the actual NFT, and the NFT was designed to be the Clinique the Clinique molecule. So you got like the first 3 parts of the Clinique molecule, which was really pretty significant. The second was 10 years of product. And so, a lot of our promises, we're not a one and done brand. We're a brand that stays with you as you go through different aspects of your life. And what we said was that 3 consumers would win 10 years of Clinique products. So every year we're going to be in touch with these consumers. They're going to call us and tell our consultants what's going on with their skin, their life, their health overall. And we will customize the package that goes out to them. We really wanted to make sure that the benefits of the program were physical and digital. So it was an NFT and 10 years worth of products. At the end of the program, our brand ambassadors, Amelia Clark and Melissa Barrera, was so excited about it and so inspired by the stories that they participated and announced the winners on our global social media account. So it was overall just a really great, strong program.
That's great. That's great. And then, was there any hesitation? I think one of the things we talked about and we kind of joked about is like, as far as the hesitation from senior leadership. I mean, I think some of the questions we've caught, that we'll answer a little later is, the metaverse, where do you go? What do you do? And I think it's really important to differentiate between what an NFT is and the metaverse. I mean, although they're sort of in the same ecosystem to some kind of extent, there's a vast difference in terms of how you would approach that from a brand. And I'm really curious what that process looked like as you're trying to explain it to senior leadership. Hey, this is what we want to do.
Especially when you're the first brand in the company to do it. That always makes the conversations even more interesting, because there's a certain amount of education that you have to go through. I will say though that the best partners I found as you go through transformation can sometimes be your legal teams, the procurement, finance, HR, and IT. It's incredible when they are empowered and on this journey with you through transformation. They were our biggest advocates for this, which is really hard when you think about like legal, looking at these documents and thinking about the impact of the brand for the very first time, because we've never done an NFT project, or procurement, understanding how to negotiate rights, or finance and HR. So I think we had a tremendous amount of support and understanding, from all of our partner teams, which is really great. I think the biggest discussion we had was on ownership and value. It's a really frightening thing sometimes for a brand to say, I don't own this NFT. Like, I'm going to give you a part of my brand and then we're out. So, and that was the approach we took, right? Which is that we don't own the NFT anymore. We did not assign a value to it. So it really is left up to the community, and the community now owns, 3 of the Clinique molecules, the first ever NFTs that we've created. They get to assign a value and decide if they want to sell it or trade it or keep it. And that, I think, took us the longest, because it takes a bit of discussion to figure out what this means for us as a brand and how we start to redefine the role of a community in this new world.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that you're 100% right, and we've had these conversations internally at AdMix. I mean, we actually own land to help really bridge the gap, to be that gateway for brands to enter the metaverse, because as a brand, it's an asset. You don't want to own that asset. You don't. I mean, that it creates all different kind of legal issues and all different kinds of hoops that you've got to jump through. And so what we've really felt was needed was to actually have that ownership of the land, because it's a creator economy now. It's a different type of environment within the metaverse and different rules to go by. And so from a brand perspective, it can be very scary. So it's interesting, the fact that you start with legal first, because that's not normally where I think anybody would think to go to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always find that we spend so much time training our marketing and digital teams, as we should. And then I think some of the teams that we partner with, a killer legal person that understands digital and where it's going, there's literally like nothing like it, or a finance person, finance lead that understands the importance of investing in a TikTok or, an Upland or one of these spaces where it's hard to define the value of it, right? That it's really innovation where we're trying to test and learn in that space. I think partnerships like that really, at least in my experience, over time have really helped drive. There's such drivers of innovation if you can get those relationships right.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important, and it is such a new space that I think it's important to understand the dynamics of it, because it's not just a traditional advertiser, brand, agency, publisher relationship any longer. It's a much different ecosystem in which there's different rules and different legalities in terms of how to navigate it. And I think that it's really important that you find the right partners to be able to do that. I think we're getting close to wrapping up. I've got another question, then I think we'll probably go to Q&A. So I think, one of the things that we talked a little bit about was like, what's been the response from your customers with this program? I mean, not just from a stats standpoint, but just obviously you shared some of the stories from, stories of optimism, which are just, phenomenal. Always good to hear.
Yeah.
What other feedback did you get from customers with this program, and what did they think of like an NFT? I mean,
Yeah, the response was incredible. I mean, let me start with just the market first, right? We weren't the first to launch the NFT in the beauty space, but we did it the best, I think, in terms of just pickup. I mean, what we launched with was a US only program that was picked up in 16 countries around the world. And we got, consumers around the world reaching out to us and engaging. We saw lifts in social as high as 20-30%. We saw time spent with the brand increase 60%. We saw really significant lifts in loyalty. And lifts in search. So we saw some really incredible results coming in across the board. But the fact that we got, really good comments and interaction from current consumers, from new consumers that probably discovered Clinique for the first time and were eager to engage with us was really incredible. So just solid results across the board, even though it was our first foray into NFTs.
Fantastic. So we've got a couple of good questions. I'll lean into some of them, and then hopefully we'll get to all of them, because I know that we don't have too much time remaining. But I think one of the first questions that we had that I think was really interesting is the TikTok first. That was so fascinating. What was the thought process behind your approach with TikTok first?
I think there's so many comments here on just the social listening piece, which
exactly.
I think that helped drive it. We were talking about starting with, earlier on, starting with consumer experiences that start from the outside in. And and I think that idea is what's leading us to a TikTok first approach. The idea of that's where consumers are. I think there was a question from Angela on, did this take off organically? This was consumers talking about our brand absolutely organically, and us simply listening and being able to respond to it. I think we've learned so much from that approach of these are where the consumers of the future are, and we have to be able to connect with them in a really new and unique, different way. If you've worked with TikTok or spent time on the platform, you know that it's not like any other as well. So it's hard to just throw it into the rest of your mix. And so, we want to make sure that we're continuing to keep social at the heart of everything that we do. And within that ecosystem, TikTok being a really key platform for us.
And it's funny that I think, with TikTok in particular, it's about the creative aspect of it and so forth, which is that next leaping point off to the metaverse, which is really a creator economy.
Yeah.
It's not so much about publishers or platforms, but it's more about creators.
Absolutely.
And I think that's going to be, I think that's a really important understanding that brands need to consider when they think about the metaverse, is that it's all about that digital experiential. It's about an experience that you have with the brand as opposed to just advertising at them.
Yeah.
Which is what I think you've done a really nice job with that initial push of creating that holistic approach through getting the consumer to actually create and share their own stories, and then be able to have them rewarded with something that's unique and tangible from the brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're giving something back to them as a way for them sharing with you. And I think that I don't know if that was what your intention was, but it certainly seems like that was intentional throughout the program.
Yeah, and that's so well said. I think the commonalities are this idea of talent-led, influencer-led content and creative that as we were talking about was our strategy into amplifying it on TikTok. But I think that idea and thought easily translates into some of the new innovation areas that we're going into, right? The brands that continue to do it really well are the ones that are building these experiences on a Zepeto, on a Roblox, in a Fortnite, and the experiences are so seamless and so beautifully built. And you can see that even on a platform like Roblox, you'll get consumer feedback and interactions really, really quickly. And a low rating or a ranking can make or break the experience. And so it's absolutely critical to get those rich experiences that are really nicely integrated, really done well on all of these platforms, whether it's an Instagram or a TikTok or in the metaverse.
Yeah, and I think that's also really important because as there's differences within social media, there's differences in the metaverse, because we've talked about both you brought up both Decentraland or Sandbox, which are decentralized meta worlds, versus Roblox and Fortnite, which are centralized and controlled by the corporations. And I think that it's going to be, again, it's this whole new world of really, how do you navigate that? What's the best way? And where's the best brand experience that you think that you should be in when you're navigating that? And again, I think that that's only going to continue to expand, and it's going to be difficult to navigate. And so it's an exciting new world. One of the other questions that we had that I thought was really interesting was like, how does purpose play a role in your marketing efforts? And I think you touched on that you've kind of woven that thread through our conversation, but without actually saying something along those lines. And maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. It's a really big pillar for all that we do. I think there's several pillars that we look at, from sustainability to diversity. A lot of it also ladders, up to the Estee Lauder companies, because there's missions and goals that we all play a role into. So even though we're competing brands across the corporation, each brand really plays a role into laddering that up into what ELC does. From a Clinique perspective, we've spent so much time focusing on our sustainability efforts, from packaging to our supply chain to the way we tell our stories on social. There's a lot more that's coming on what we do with diversity, which is a huge pillar for us. And as we think about the way we tell our stories, the talent that we hire in front of and behind the camera, the influencers and the global brand ambassadors that we start to look at, the languages that we use in our comms. There's so much attention being paid to all of that, and there's a tremendous amount of work that we need to continue doing.
Sorry,
Marty,
sorry. That brings up an interesting question that somebody else had, and that is, I know that you've obviously used some big brand names with Emilia Clarke and so forth, which my wife hadn't seen Game of Thrones yet, so I'm watching it all over with her.
Oh, good.
So it's very funny. But have you used and considered micro influencers? Because I know social influencers is such a broad term that people throw out, and there's obviously the big games, but micro influencers also can be impactful to the brand. Is that something you considered at all?
Yeah, absolutely. We have micro influencers that we work with really closely every day that are sometimes cross platform, but most times unique to the platforms that they're on. We look at our consultants, so the Clinique consultants also as micro influencers, and they go through a process. If you're on any of our social channels, you'll see a tremendous amount of content from our consultants that are, going through a skin school session where you can learn about different trends and recreate makeup looks. And then we're doing everything we can to enable employees as well, and everyday consumers. So we have a few different ways into micro influencers that we've been looking at, and we're going to continue to leverage.
Fantastic. And then one of the other questions just came up from Claudia is, and I think it probably is, but I don't know if it's anything that you've necessarily defined, and that is agile marketing part of your team structure? Or a hybrid approach, because obviously you mentioned that you're able to quickly respond to insights and data coming from social listening. Is that something that you actually call out as part of your process, or is it just sort of naturally baked in?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's a focus, certainly at Clinique, and we've had an incredible year where we've seen the power of that. And so we're trying to harness search insights, social listening insights, and match that back to some of the product launches that we have and the marketing plans that we have. We look at insights across a number of different ways, right? The brand, the product, the ingredients, just to see what's trending at a certain time and how we can react to that. We still have a whole lot of work to do. I don't think you can ever move fast enough, which Probably is why, you can never move fast enough, right? Like no matter how fast you get it out there, there's always more that you could have done. And so we're looking at our value chain as, not just the brand creating content at all times, but those micro influencers, the consultants, the macro influencers that we have. So we're looking at our entire content ecosystem to see how we can get to market faster.